Sweet. We're live on Instagram. Better than I thought it would. I'll give it 1 minute here to populate. Start the 30-second clock. All right, we're back. Sports Sushi rebooted. I'm calling this Sports Sushi Singles because we're going to be more focused on a singular topic that is ideally evergreen within the sports world. Each week for the next 10 weeks, we're going to be, Sterling and I are going to be joined by a guest, and we're going to be discussing a specific topic. Today's topic is the art of team building, and our guest is Ernie Green. Ernie Green has been a sports writer for the Tonawanda News, the Niagara Gazette, and covered a lot of big-time boxing events and things like that. Ernie, if I missed anything on your resume, we'll circle back on there. I want to get the plugs and information out of the way. So, if you want to join the show, we've got the link at the bottom of the screen.
That's about it. I mean, that's...
Oop, there we go.
You forgot his social security number, by the way.
We've got the link at the bottom of the screen.
And my mother's maiden name.
Sports Sushi is presented by Gratwick. Gratwick has done an entire new brand relaunch. If you want to go to gratwick.co and check out what we've got in store, sign up for the Gratwick newsletter if you haven't already. My first novel will be coming out next month, and that will be free to anyone that is subscribed to the Gratwick newsletter. So you're going to want to jump on that. On January 15th, Gratcast returns. I'll be debuting my book cover on Gratcast, and we'll be getting in all things Gratwick. If you haven't seen already, let me put it on screen real quick. We've got, hit the wrong button already. We've got, I'll show it at the end. We've got the next 4 weeks of guests lined up. We had it there at the opening sequence of the topics and guests that we've got coming up next week. I'll plug that again at the end of the show. The new format's simple. Open discussion, anything goes as long as it's related to the subject matter. We'd like this to be a little bit more audience engagement and participation. Hopefully that'll grow over time because I'm going to be running ads for these shows. So once this show's done, we're going to get out there with a bunch of ads and hopefully we'll see some growth from one episode to the next. On my right, we've got Sterling. He's going to be my co-host throughout this adventure. We don't have our name tags working right now, but that'll get sorted out later. And the previously introduced Ernie Green. Ernie, what did I miss?
Nothing. You were good. Everything, that was perfect.
All right. We're off. Let's get into the topic for tonight. The topic is the art of team building. Now, this covers everything. Every sport, every angle of building and putting a team out on the field and remaining competitive. But I've got some different segments and topics that we're going to get into first to discuss this. Before I taint the waters with any kind of question or angle, I want to just ask both of you. We'll go Ernie first and then Sterling. What if you had to summarize your general team building philosophy, Ernie? What do you look for, and what is important to you in the essence of building a team, say from the ground up?
You know what? I actually built a team from the ground up last year. We played in the baseball tournament in Cooperstown, and the thing that I wanted was, there's a big difference between loving to win and hating to lose. Everybody loves to win. If you ask anybody, would you rather win or lose? Everyone's going to say win, obviously. But when you hate to lose, that means you're going to put in all the work to not lose. If you just say, "Oh, I love to win," that doesn't tell me anything about somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like that does. Oh, you love to win. Who doesn't? But if you hate to lose, you're going to do everything you can to not lose. That was in my opinion, I think that's the biggest quality that would separate, and it could be in an amateur sport like myself or professional sports. To me, that separates the winners from the losers. Who hates to lose, and who loves to win? If you hate to lose, you are somebody that I want on my side.
Winning is fun, but losing is fucking salty, man. I hate it. I hate it. Sterling, you can retort, or you can give us your.
No, I like what you had to say, Ernie. I'm gonna go with integrity. You know, you want people that are gonna do it the right way, on and off the field. You know, there is a saying about football character. You know, if we're talking about team building, I'm going to give you an idea from a football lens. Like, you want guys. I mean, everybody trains, right? Everybody's going to do their workouts, and but you want guys that are like, what can I do to self-introspect, look at myself, and say, hey, what can I do to get myself better outside the structure of the foundation that's been laid by my team or organization? There are many examples. You look, Kobe Bryant was Mamba mentality, right? Mm-hmm. This is a guy who would have shoot-arounds before games, after games. This is a guy who would he would have a practice before the practice. You want guys like that. It kind of flows and builds into what Ernie was saying here. And once you get guys like that in your organization, you're gonna have guys that don't want to lose, right? That are gonna do whatever it takes to get to that next level. So integrity to me is a big one.
So let me follow
to add to your. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ernie. Jump in.
Well, I just want to add to his point about Kobe is, if you've seen the Redeem Team documentary, there's a story where they were training in Vegas, and the whole team except for Kobe went out to a club in Vegas the one night, and they were stumbling in at 5 a.m. And when they're stumbling in at 5 a.m. from the club, they saw Kobe going to the gym to start his day in full workout clothes. And they're like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm starting my day." Like, what do you mean? What am I doing? And by the end of the week,
I just feel like a piece of shit if you're one of the guys coming in from the club and you're seeing your team leader go and do that.
Literally every single person went out except for him, and he was the one that wanted to go to work at 5:30 a.m. He had his workout gloves on, and by the end of the week, the entire team was on his schedule. So that's integrity and that's leadership. But you thought what Sterling's talking about to a T.
So let me follow up the integrity part with another layer of integrity. Where do you guys fall on character in general as far as the players? I mean, the old school mindset is we're not looking for choir boys here to win a football game, but at the same time, you want upstanding citizens and high character, high value guys. Where does the line fall between I want a crazy motherfucker like Bill Romanowski on my team and I don't want Aaron Hernandez on my team? Where's the line between those two?
Well, the line is not murdering somebody. And in those two cases,
Facts.
I mean, Bill Romanowski was a wild man, but he never, I mean, to my knowledge, off the top of my head, he never got in any sort of legal trouble. I mean, there's, I think, Rob Gronkowski was a dumbass on the field, but he's not. He was a scholar athlete in high school and college, and he's not dumb. So having that, having a lot of those people that have that, I'm going to say Mamba mentality, because I think Kobe's kind of like the leader now in terms of that mentality, because just that win at all costs and what thing. But I mean, Kobe, yeah, he had one obviously big accusation that happened, but otherwise he never got in any legal trouble. I mean, as long as you don't. The thing about that is, you're not you're not helping the team if you're off the field because you're suspended. Right. So there's the line right there. If you're missing games because of your stupidity, that's where the line is crossed. Because the team, if you're that good, the team needs you, and that's kind of to me where the line is where the line is crossed right there. When your actions are costing yourself games, which is hurting your team.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
So I learned this past year with Deion Sanders. He was asked in a press conference about some of his recruiting tactics, and he said, when I look at a defensive player, I want a guy that ain't got nothing to lose. I want a guy that's shacked up, living with his mom, get it out the mud, hard living, like. And when I look at for my offensive guys, it's a different story. It's a different kind of guy that I'm looking for offensively. And I think teams fall into this unfair box of how they characterize people's character, where they one size fits all. And in sports and organizations, it just doesn't work that way. I feel like, you could take a risk on guys like Aaron Hernandez if you have the right system in place where you could get guys to become the best version of themselves. Now, it is ultimately up to the player to make their own decisions, but you can't have a locker room full of choir boys, right? We're not talking about Hoosiers here, but you're gonna have to do both. You're gonna have some risky guys that have talent, and it's up to the coaching staff or the person at the helm to get every ounce of productivity out of this person. And I think organizations more times fail players and players fail organizations.
Yeah. I think there's an unspoken element that people that maybe just watch and are fans of the sport but never played sports might miss or overlook. And I feel like that's a lot of the same traits that make you a great player and a great athlete and have that drive, that despising to lose, are also a lot of the same characteristics and traits that can lead especially a young, wealthy person into foolish situations. You're overly boisterous. You're overly confident. You're overly bold and brave and willing to take risks. That doesn't just restrain itself to the field. Off the field, that there's part of which makes you tick. And I just think you can't find somebody that is going to play by the rules all the time and do every single thing the right way, but never think about how to do it better, do it different, do it harder. And that kind of attitude and mentality gets you into trouble at times.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a high wire act, to be honest with you, and it's something that, unless I assume Sterling's played team sports before,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I just made it 10 minutes ago. I'm just making an assumption. You know what I'm saying? So when you all three of us have been in a dugout or a locker room or all of the above, and yeah, not everybody. I mean, we're all wired differently. You know what I'm saying? Some people, and like Sterling talking about the people with nothing to lose, like they said, they're living in, if they're living in that 1-bedroom apartment with their mother, also they haven't had the access to how to be a functional member of society yet, because they haven't had to. You know what I'm saying? So they go to college, and they, big man on campus all of a sudden, they get all these gifts and all this stuff, and it's like getting, it's like trying to drink water out of a, it's like trying to drink water out of a fire hydrant. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and that's not exclusive to any type of demographic. Like that happened to Johnny Manziel. Johnny Manziel went from a backup quarterback to the Heisman Trophy winner. And if there's ever a case of someone that could not handle success, it's Johnny Manziel. So it can happen to anybody. Like Sterling said, organizations fail. I think Texas A&M really failed him. They didn't really protect him. He went from obscurity to beating Alabama to all of a sudden being the face of college football. And with that's something where you're not ready for. And that is just something that we're as a society and as like a football program, they turn a blind eye because he's so talented. But at the end of the day, turning a blind eye hurts them long term.
Johnny Manziel was the real life Joe Kane.
Mm-hmm.
Here's something about Johnny Manziel that I learned from watching that Netflix docuseries. I don't know if you guys watched that about him, but one of the things that stood out to me is like Johnny Manziel gets a bad rap, and he should, but the talent's there. He's a perfect case of like your talent can only take you so far. But one of the things that stood out to me in that docuseries was that once he saw the business side of college football, I think that's what ruined him. That's what ruined him, because now, he comes from a upper middle class family where, they really didn't have to struggle, but he saw how much money they were making off of him. And that's where shit kind of went off the rails for Johnny Manziel. But I have a perfect example about this. So you guys remember Josh Rosen? Yeah. Josh Rosen is the king of as talent, wealthy family growing up. And then you look at guys like Lamar Jackson, for instance, in the same draft class. What they say about him, you can't read a defense. You probably should play wide receiver. And, Josh Rosen was picked, 9th overall to the Cardinals. and booted out of the league like a couple seasons afterwards because, man, your talent can only take you so far, but it goes back to that football character or that integrity of the game. What are you going to do with your portion of it? And I think people and organizations, and I think the coaching staffs, a lot of times, man, like I said, they set these players up to fail, and it's sad.
Yeah, and two similarities about them. Johnny Manziel went to the Cleveland Browns, and Josh Rosen went to the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, if that's not getting set up to fail off the get-go, I'm not sure what is.
You got screwed.
Yeah.
And we'll circle down to the quarterbacks. I want to start top down with an organizational structure, but those are two good examples of teams that just took a player and didn't really build a team around the player that they chose. All right. So top down, when you're building a new team, so you're brought in as president, clean house, start over from scratch. Which philosophy do you think is better to build around? A GM centric philosophy or a coach centric philosophy between the two? Ernie?
Well, I mean, coach or GM, if we're discussing football or let's just discuss this in football or basketball terms. You have to shoot for the franchise player, no pun intended. And you whether it's a franchise player in basketball like a Jokic or like a LeBron or something like that, or you have to find the franchise quarterback. You have to keep shooting until you get it, because in both of those sports, the franchise player makes the organization look good, not the other way around.
Right.
Like John Fox was an average coach, had Peyton Manning for a year, went to the Super Bowl. It wasn't because John Fox all of a sudden became an offensive guru. It's because he had Peyton Manning. A lot of teams have a lot of good players, and they make the coach look good. I mean, Bill Belichick, who parted ways today, great coach, but the bottom line is he was a below 500 coach without Tom Brady.
So if you're GM and you're hiring a coach, are you hiring a coach that embodies your philosophy, or are you hiring who you think is the best coach and then supporting their vision and philosophy?
I think it's, if I'm a GM, I have to be comfortable with the foundational beliefs that I have, and I'm hiring a head coach that kind of embodies that. You're like Ernie said, you're looking for that franchise piece, right? But it is up to, in finding that right head coach that embodies what you believe, you kind of have to paint a picture, paint a story to where that head coach, you give him the tools to succeed and give him everything that he needs to be the best version of himself. So I'm fully GM on this. Coaches come and go, right? There are more coaches fired than there are GMs fired when we talk about the NBA or the NFL. Now, sometimes those come in packages, but for the most part, it's these coaches that are going to go. Like if you had Peyton Manning, but you had a shitty head coach, well, you're not getting rid of Peyton Manning. You're getting rid of that head coach, and you can change the culture however many times you need to do it until you get it right.
Ernie, anything to add on that?
No, I 100% agree. GMs get the pace at which coaches get fired is far greater than the way GMs get fired, and I believe the foundation of the team, what you believe in, is huge, because you have to instill all of these things into the organization from top to bottom. And honestly, it has to come from even higher than the GM spot. It has to come from ownership and all the way down. But you have to instill like character and discipline, and like empowering your players and coaches to be the best they can be. And that to me starts at the top and goes to the bottom. So in terms of food chain, the GM to me is more important than the coach.
Okay. Next up down the ladder, do you consider the coach more important than any positional player on the team?
No.
Who wants to go first?
No. I don't know how to say, but no. I mean, like I said, in the case of a lot of franchises, the star player makes the coach, not the other way around. Look at last year's championships and we'll go basketball. The last couple of years, basketball and football. Patrick Mahomes, franchise player. By the way, Andy Reid was a loser until Patrick Mahomes came along. He got his best quarterback. All of a sudden, now he's a winner and a two-time Super Bowl champion. Nikola Jokic with the
Denver Nuggets.
With Denver Nuggets, who's beyond great. I mean, Mike Malone's a good coach, but is he going to take the Orlando Magic to the promised land or some other, the Pistons? No, absolutely not. And so it's always the franchise players. Steph Curry the year before,
Yeah.
and then after who won, and then the Rams with Matt Stafford and Aaron Donald. It's always the players over the coaches.
Now, I will say, I will add this to what you're saying. I think there's some anomalies. I feel like Sean McVay is an anomaly because he is the system. You know what I'm saying? Like a guy like, and those kind of hires and those kind of types are very few and far between. But Sean McVay is a perfect example of, like for this season, for instance, like a lot of people thought that they were going to be bottom dwellers. You're talking about a roster that was depleted, but that system, despite who he had at quarterback at times, Matt Stafford was injured and so forth, they found a way to get it done, and they're in the playoffs. And I think, a lot of that has to do, I mean, yes, you got Matt Stafford, you have Aaron Donald, but picking a Puka Nacua in the 5th round, who really was an afterthought, right? And you put him in that system with Sean McVay as a guy who's going to get everything out of his players. Those are few and far between, man. That's why they're so hard to find guys like that.
Now, if the star player, the key franchise, now obviously there's a prime example that's inciting this follow-up question, but it's a general question all the same. How do you know when your star player or your franchise player, in this sense, maybe a quarterback, is carrying a average or subpar coach? What does that look like? And is that something that can be addressed? Because clearly you have a star player and a franchise player, so you're probably still winning, even in spite of that shortcoming. So how do you address that? How do you identify that type of conflict in agendas?
Well, without mentioning the obvious, coach, that you and I would want to talk about, I'll just talk about in generalities that are you getting everything out of your franchise, even though he's your franchise player? Even it's kind of like I think it's kind of an eye test thing when you followed sports and you've been around sports. Are you getting every single possible thing that you can out of your franchise quarterback? Is your head coach or your star player in basketball, is your head coach empowering with his philosophy that player to be the very best he can be, or is their philosophy, which may be archaic, holding them back? And I think in a lot of times, I mean, they've empowered. I think someone like Andy Reid, I think, has definitely empowered Patrick Mahomes.
Oh yeah.
But other franchise quarterbacks have been literally told not to be themselves. That's holding them back, and that's kind of so it goes both ways. Honestly, I think obviously all the analytics. There's analytics in sports, and all the stat dorks think they know everything, and there is something to analytics, but this is a lot of eye testing, body language, maximization of players. That's something that you have to watch on a game-to-game basis to see what happens.
Yeah, and I go, when you brought that question up, the first place I went was Phil Collins, Chicago Bulls. They were Doug Collins. Yeah, listen, they were decent. They were decently good. But they really didn't really didn't start moving and shaking until they got Phil Jackson. And they made some personnel changes. But Michael Jordan they were losing in the first round, like with Jordan, a young Jordan at that. Yeah. But the dude was still averaging 30 points a game, right? And then so they got rid of Doug Collins. In comes Phil Jackson, and the whole thing changed because Phil Jackson was able to get Jordan to not only be great, but be the superpower, the superstar, the best player to ever play the game that he is today, or was. Because great player meets great philosopher head coach, right? And then they changed the course of basketball forever. I mean, let's be honest, man.
To add to your point, Sterling, like there's levels of quarterback play and there's levels of coaches. Like Doug Collins was a very good coach, but Phil Jackson was an A+ Hall of Fame coach, and
absolutely,
and like I said, there's also the same thing with coaching, like same thing with coaching, the same thing with players, is there's, levels. And when you can level up a perfect match, like an A+ coach with an A+ talent, that's where everything gets empowered. That's where you have not only championships, but dynasties.
One of the things that I took away from Phil Jackson and what kind of was the impression left on me in sports is really what the responsibility of a coach becomes once you have an elite roster, or you have the best players or a number of top athletes in that game on your team. It becomes less about the X's and O's and more about the managing of the egos and the characters and the dynamics of the relationships within all of that, and knowing how to push buttons, how to get the most out of people. But the really biggest point that I think it becomes is you get somebody like Michael Jordan. You get, and I'll say the name. You get somebody like Josh Allen, where they're already amped up. They're already driven on their own to win and be great. But the problem is that they can get too hyped up. They can get too over the top. And it's like an engine with the RPMs running way over 3,000 and the engine's running too hot. And it's not in an optimal zone. I think the biggest asset a coach brings to a player of that caliber or a team of that caliber is getting them to settle in just a notch below revving, so the engine isn't blowing itself out and pushing too hard, and is in that prime optimal zone just below that for as long as possible or as consistently as possible. And I think that's where the real true gift of coaching and managing elite athletes and elite rosters comes in.
Well, I know he's baiting me to say it, so I'm going to say it. The relationship with Mike Holmgren and Brett Favre.
Absolutely.
Brett Favre, I mean, the funniest clips of NFL films is Mike Holmgren losing his mind when Brett Favre was early in the league, when he really he had the untapped skill, but he really, yeah, exactly. But instead of, he wouldn't, instead of giving up, just say throw the ball away, he tried to fit in triple coverage. Holmgren on the side, like, we gotta pull him. Wait a minute. Then he'd change his mind. No more rocket balls, please. Like, there's so many anecdotes, but Mike Holmgren,
the greatest line in all of NFL history.
Mike Holmgren reigned him, no more rocket balls, please. Hilarious. Mike Holmgren was able to finally corral that talent and nurture it into a 3 straight time MVP, surefire Hall of Famer, one of the greatest to play the game. He always had the talent, but it was a question of can he take that talent and turn it into superstardom, where, again, the engine isn't revved too tight. He's actually calm, making plays and things like that. I think another person was LeBron James, to be honest with you. LeBron James was the same way. Eric Spoelstra, who just got a contract extension, was one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most underrated coaches in the history of sports, by the way. Eric Spoelstra, with the help of his teammates, they were able to rein him in. Phil Jackson reined in Jordan, Pippen, Shaq, Kobe, all of them. Shaq and Kobe couldn't get along. I mean, I'm not sure they ever got along, but they tolerated each other enough to win 3. They tolerated each other enough to win 3 championships together, and that was because of Phil Jackson. So yes, you have to have somebody to just to be able to put them in that sweet spot of where they're revved up but not too revved up.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That Shaq Kobe relationship, man, it was something. I think and kind of I just want to say this, but I think we forget that Shaq carried Kobe in those finals. Shaq was the one, because he already had success. Really, he was the catalyst for that, and Kobe was just kind of as great as Kobe was. It's just I think, man, people forget that, like, Shaq was the glue for that championship run. Dwayne Wade and LeBron James. Dwayne Wade had already won a title before LeBron got there, and I don't know if you guys remember this. One of the things that they talked about was what Eric Spoelstra talked to LeBron about. It's like, bro, you got to get a post game. You have no post game, and that's the reason why you couldn't beat San Antonio, because once they took some certain things away from your game, you had no answer. And so once they he completely changed his game. So what did they do that year? I think it was the year after they lost to the Mavericks in 2013. What LeBron and D Wade say, you know what? We're not shooting threes. We are going downhill and we are dunking on everybody. And that's what they did.
That on the banana boat.
Yep. They probably did with Carmelo.
All right. Next question. If you were running a team, which way would you lean more towards as your coaching style? Strict discipline oriented, or more player friendly, loose, and everybody kind of is their own person?
Honestly, I appreciate the question. I think it's an and. I don't think it's an or. I think you need to have some, like, I will say this, we can talk about the Bills head coach all they want, but their culture Monday to Saturday, I think they have that for the most part. They have the strict culture, but they're also themselves. I think you need to have both. I think you need to set a standard of this is what we expect you. This is how hard you need to work. This is how you need to conduct yourself on and off the field. But at the same time, you have to be yourself. If you're someone who likes to laugh, someone who likes to dance around, have a good time, you have to have. I think it's an and more than an or. I think the more structure you have, the better. So I would lean, if given one or the other, I would lean towards the, having the structure, having the discipline.
Sure.
But I think good organizations have that. Great organizations have both.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. When you look at human culture, human nature, like right now, you say there's this thing where we say, these young cats they're weak. You know what I'm saying? Like there's this thing, like I talked to my son, like, man, you guys are just not the same as ones. We had it tougher. We could take tough coaching, right? Structure should be the foundation, but you have to be able to relate to these kids, to these young men and women today. And I think, Pete Carroll was one of the guys, even though he just got fired. But you talk about I think he had a good blend of both. Whereas Bill Belichick only knew one way, was the Iron Fist. But Pete Carroll, man, he had the innate ability to relate to these players. And I think dude's 72 years old, and look at him, like he's talking about going surfing. Like he is insane, but he could be strict, but he can also flip the button and say, you know what, I'm gonna relate to you guys today. Let's shoot some hoops. So I think you got to be both, man.
I agree as well, and I think that goes back to, again, like the great coaches knowing which buttons to push at which times, and that gets boiled down to each person has a different set of buttons and being aware and knowing that. So the follow-up question becomes star treatment. Is star treatment a natural element of sports, or is it something that undermines the culture of the locker room? Because I'm just as good as he is. I just don't get the same opportunities. So he's getting all treated like that because the coach loves him. And I'm over here just as another jag on the team getting bitter and resentful. How do you guys feel about star treatment?
Well, in terms of star treatment for me, if you're no matter what sport it is, I don't think you're going anywhere unless your best player is also the hardest worker.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're getting that so if you're getting that start treatment and it's earned, like I don't think anybody disputes that Josh Allen's the hardest worker on the Bills and that Patrick Mahomes is the hardest worker on the Chiefs and so on and so forth. So if you get that quote unquote start treatment and it's earned, it's great for the organization. If you're giving someone start treatment who hasn't earned it, that's where the organization tumbles, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, like, if the top rookie in the draft comes in and is automatically treated like a star without earning anything, you think that sets the locker room up for disappointment and division?
Yes.
Yeah, man, it sifts you. They will sift you out so quick. I mean, perfect. You look at guys like Kyler Murray, great talent, but man, he had to come to some realizations early in his career, and he's still trying to figure it out. You could look at what the Broncos did with Russell Wilson. He is not the same player that he once was, but they gave that man an office next to management. They gave him an office and he used it, and it rubbed players the wrong way. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's making all this money, and he was shit last year, a little bit better this year. But I mean, it just goes to show, man, that like that kind of stuff's important, man. You got to be able to, you got to be able to check these guys, because sometimes people will take advantage of you, and it's up to the head coach, it's up to the GM and the owner to kind of set the foundation straight, man. And I think they fail at that sometimes.
So let's give a specific example here and ask you each how you would treat this person coming into your locker room. Caleb Williams clearly has expectations and beliefs on where he should go and how he should be treated before he's ever taken a snap in the NFL. Is his talent already worth catering to those demands and setting precedences, or are you going to try and take him down a peg or two and humble him and hope you can build him back up as a better person?
Caleb Williams is an interesting case because his views on like, oh, I want part ownership of it. Like his views are just so out there. They're just like there's like the people who want to be treated like stars, and then there's like over the top, like what the hell are you even talking about? And I kind of feel like Caleb Williams is that what the hell are you even talking about person? Like, oh, I'm only going to the team to give me part ownership. Like what? Like Peyton Manning never asked that, or Tom Brady never. You know what I'm saying? Like the greatest players of all
Marcus
time.
Russell was running around right now with a piece of the Raiders.
Oh my! Well, honestly, that would be high. First off, that would be a great reality show, would it not? Would you not watch Sterling? Would you not watch a reality show of Jamarcus Russell owning the Raiders? I would never turn that off. I would watch.
Oh man, that'd be comical. I mean, how much lean can that man drink?
Well, that purple drink. Yeah, we got to get that purple. But to answer your question,
ever a chance of getting that deal, Jamarcus ruined it for everybody.
Man,
like literally, they changed the contract structure after that because it was the new collective bargaining agreement. They're like, we're not giving anybody else $80 million. We're going to have the rookie pay structure. He literally ruined it for all the rookies coming in. But to answer your question, talk is talk. And if you come in the locker room and you're the hardest worker and you're working hard and you're studying your playbook and you're working out, all those things so that's what's going to happen. All this noise before he gets there is going to be nothing. If someone says all the right things and is a douchebag in the locker room, he's going to get weeded out. If a guy talks the world, but he comes in the locker room and Jameis Winston Jameis Winston is beloved by his teammates for what kind of leader he is. And that you never would have guessed that the way things at Florida State went down. So a lot of bluster is bluster. When you get in the locker room with your teammates and they see how you are as a person and how hard you work, that takes care of everything. And I think the three of us beat in those situations before will agree.
Is what's out there already enough to stop you from drafting him or passing him over for a similar talent? Or would you just roll the dice and hope that's just bluster?
Man, it depends on, first of all, who am I as a franchise? Like, what team am I? Because, I think there's certain locker room styles that he could fit in. And I think there's others that he cannot. If you ask me today, I'm not drafting him. Now, people will call me crazy because he's the best talent. But we've seen this story before where the best talent necessarily doesn't always equate to the best long-term success, right? Like, how many quarterbacks were drafted over Kirk Cousins? I mean, a lot. RG3, and he had injuries, but, they took a fifth round flyer on Kirk Cousins and look at him. He's not a world beater by any means, but he stayed in the league and made a lot of money. But Caleb Williams, to me, man, he's super talented. The gifting is there. I'm honestly not trying to have a dude in my locker room that paints his fingernails with the other team. Like, I like, what are you going to tell a eight-year veteran? You know what I'm saying? Like, what? And you want part ownership of the team? Like, no. I can't handle that. To me, that's buffoonery. To me, it's disrespectful to the players that are in your locker room, the vets, grown men with kids and wives and with real responsibilities. And then this is who y'all drafting. Like, I think as analysts and fans, we put a lot of stock into these players' abilities and talents. But when you look in the NFL locker room, it's they see it completely different than we do.
Really quickly, just to add to your point on that is that, should Caleb Williams be drafted? Absolutely. Someone's gonna draft it. Absolutely. But if anybody is somewhat similar in talents and they have a better character, I'm taking them every day, because again, character matters. And this guy unless he comes into these interviews and really wows them and says, hey, this is all bluster, it was just me talking. But he's got a lot more. So he's got a lot more to prove than, say, a Michael Penix, who has said everything right, who's a great teammate. Everybody loves him. So he has a lot longer and further to go to win over a locker room than a Michael Penix or a Drake May or, or a Jaden Daniels or something like that.
So transitioning towards building through the draft or having a more win-now oriented philosophy, let's start with this follow-up question that kind of leads us down that road. If each of you were the general manager of the Bears today, what are you doing? Are you taking the risk on Caleb Williams? Are you sticking with Justin Fields, or are you going in a completely different direction?
Well, here's the thing. With that draft pick, I think, the Bears are not a playoff team next year. Either way, whether they have Caleb Williams or Justin Fields.
Right.
They will be able to accumulate so many draft picks if they trade that draft pick away and their own draft picks that it's going to be a bonanza for them. They can set their franchise up huge for the future with so many draft picks. And then You give Justin Fields one more year, and if he's your franchise quarterback, great. Then you can use all those draft picks on high-end talent. If not, you have enough draft capital by far and then some to move up in the draft and get your guy. Honestly, if I was the Bears this year, I'm trading that draft pick. I am getting as much as I can in draft capital, and I'm giving Justin Fields one more year to see where he goes. And then because they're not making the playoffs next year, but with two good drafts and a quarterback in 2 years, they could be, with the right draft picks and the right philosophy, with the right quarterback, they could be a contender.
Yeah, and I'll go even as far as this. I'll say I would have fired Matt Eberflus. You know, I'm looking to hire a winning head coach like a Jim Harbaugh. It would be perfect for the Chicago Bears. I'm trading that pick, and I'm taking a different quarterback. So I'm getting rid of Justin Fields too, because I mean we've seen what we need to see from Justin Fields. I think I think he would be successful in another organization. You know, I think sometimes you look at certain situations and you go, he just needs to change the scenery. I just don't think his success is going to be in Chicago. I think it's time to move on. You've seen all you needed to see. You as an owner and as a coaching staff, they failed Justin Fields to an extent. But Justin Fields is who he's going to be. I think it's time for another franchise to get a shot to see if they can get everything out of him. But I'm like Ernie said, man, I'm building for now and the future. So I'm getting rid of that pick, and I want more for future first round picks for later years. But they got a solid defense that they can lean on right now. They're just missing some pieces. But yeah, I'm stacking the deck, man.
Yeah, I'm a big believer when you're drafting high of trading down and just picking up more and more assets. Sterling knows this firsthand. That's my MO. I trade down into like 7, 8, 9, or 10, and then trade down again and double dip on getting all of that action. And Ernie, your philosophy is great. Either we're going to be loaded with assets and you're going to turn the corner, or you're going to bottom out again. And now we're going to have a ton of assets, get our quarterback, and we can load them up with weapons. It's kind of a win-win situation. So following back around on this, Ernie, where do you fall on? Are you more of somebody that believes building repetitively through the draft, getting your own talent, coaching them up, bringing them and teaching them the way of your team? Or are you more of like what the Rams do? Trade your draft picks for proven talent, try to win now, fuck the future, we got our trophy?
I think Sean McVay, like Sterling said, Sean McVay is just the outlier. Like the list of people who can do that is Sean McVay, and that's it. I think the way you win in the NFL now, which has been proven, is you find your franchise quarterback and then you just stack the deck around him and get as much talent as you can around him to win a Super Bowl or two before that rookie deal ends, and then you have to pay him. Work with Pat Mahomes. I think that's the way to win in the NFL right now, where get the franchise quarterback, build an offensive line. Once you got those two, go out and get weapons, and then you can. Once you have that foundation, then you can use those draft picks to go out and get a number one receiver or number one tight end or whatever you need to do. But but the big thing, get the franchise quarterback, protect him with a great offensive line, and then you can move on either through the draft or through free agency and build and give him enough weapons to succeed. You can never have enough weapons on offense.
Right. I wish the Bills would learn that.
Oh my God! Don't even get me started, brother.
But look, we got to throw some credit to Les Snead's way, because he has done a phenomenal job of finding talent in mid to late rounds, man, and I think that's helped them a lot. But you're right, Sean McVay and his system, and you can't beat that. Like he is just a mastermind. I would even venture to say, Kyle Shanahan is up there too. He's not McVay, but he's up there. But yeah, man, I'm trying to get a quarterback first. Nothing happens. This is funny, guys. You tell me what you think about this, but there, I live in Denver, okay, and there's this idea. I brought this up to a couple of my Bronco buddies. I said, what do you guys, what's the fan consensus on the 12th overall pick? And they say, well, we're not going to be able to get a quarterback because we got the 12th pick and we got this dead cap space. So Russell Wilson, we don't know what we're going to do, blah, 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 blah. I said, why don't you package Pat Surtain in a trade to get up into the top 5? Oh, no. I said, but if you don't have a quarterback, what is the top cornerback going to do for you?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. Like you need to move up. You need to get into the top 5 and get one of these top 3 guys. Which if I'm a Broncos fan, or if I'm the GM or owner, like that, I don't care who we have on the roster. If we don't have a quarterback, we got nothing. So it's just kind of funny how people, how they value good players that can only get you to a certain place. But man, you got to get a quarterback in the NFL. It's not even a question.
Sterling, to add to your point, go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to ask him on which way he leans, as opposed to building through the draft or trading for proven
draft
talent.
all day. Draft.
What was your follow-up, Ernie?
To add to your point, Sterling, is that there is not, unless you have like a surefire Hall of Fame edge rusher, a surefire Hall of Fame wide receiver or offensive lineman, mainly a tackle, there should be no one in the organization that you would hold untouchable to get a top flight quarterback. Nobody. Yep. Patrick Surtain is a great cornerback, but if that's the guy you got to, if that's the guy you got to get rid of to get by, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, good luck in your next organization.
Yep.
Okay. So the next question, regardless of whether it's a quarterback, a goalie, a center in hockey, a star player in basketball, what in the modern era of sports is your limit on that premium pick, that heir apparent that they were supposed to be, reaching their potential or proving that they're the guy? How long do you think in the modern era that these star players should be given?
Well, quarterbacks, they reach their full potential usually in year 3 or 4. But you usually can see in year 1 that they're gonna have the potential to do it, in my opinion, or they're gonna have the flashes. Like for example, Josh Allen in 2018, he didn't have a great, but you could see that the talent was there. Just a matter of, it wasn't
once the game slowed down.
It was a matter of, to me, it was a matter of when, not if, in terms of Josh Allen. CJ Stroud has had a great rookie year. When I saw him in preseason, I could tell it's a matter of when, not if. It might, these guys might not be a franchise quarterback the first year, but when you can just see when and not if. So 2-3 years, if they haven't shown that, it's time to move on. It's like Sterling said about Justin Fields. Has he really shown them the flashes of? He's shown the flashes of being a good quarterback, but he's not shown the flashes of being a franchise quarterback. Mm-hmm. And they have the opportunity to draft the franchise quarterback this year, so they have to upgrade in that position. So it's not the first 2 or 3 years, or it's never going to happen.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that, man. It's I think the infrastructure that you have in place, like you look at the Bills as a perfect example. A lot of the guys that get drafted by them, they talk about, the third year is like, that's the year where you should know whether or not, if this player is rosterable, we can keep him and we can build from there or not, and I think that question kind of is a little different for different teams and organizations based off their infrastructure. But, I'd like to say, you at least give it 3 to 4 years. I mean, I think that's more than enough time to kind of figure out what you got.
Okay. So this might be our most controversial question of the evening. Is it ever appropriate to tank?
And so in the NFL, I'm not sure if it's appropriate. I've seen far too many cases where teams have tanked and they've never come back out of it. Then I have tank and it's worked. At least in the NFL, if you suck, you're going to get the number 1 pick. If you're in any of the other 3 major sports, whether it's basketball, hockey, or baseball now, it's a lottery. Like the Buffalo Sabres tanked for Connor McDavid when they had a 25% chance of getting him. That is about the dumbest. If they had a 100% chance of getting him, because that guy was earmarked from the beginning to be a franchise NHL player. He's amazing, right? If they were 100% earmarked to get him, that's at least a thing where it's worth, losing for. But they had a 25% chance of getting him. And that was just idiotic. And they haven't recovered since. And a lot of teams who have tanked, the Boston Celtics tanked in the mid-90s to get Tim Duncan. Guess what they didn't get? Tim Duncan. And even though they had the highest odds in the lottery, but 25% odds means 75% chance no. So is it like, I would never tank, and if someone team wants to tank, there's no right or wrong answer in this. But I will say this: I have, in my observation, far more teams have failed from trying to tank than they have succeeded.
Yeah. I'm okay with tanking. When you look at like the Indianapolis Colts, where they sucked for luck when Peyton Manning was injured and they sucked for luck, I think it benefited them well. But what did they not do? They put all their eggs in the Andrew Luck basket and they said, you know what? Oh, I guess we'll take a vacation here because we're not going to give you the offensive line pieces you need. And what happened in 5 years? The man was out of the league because they beat the shit out of him. So, there's tanking, and then there's like, the next step after that is healthy roster construction. You have to do both. I'm okay with tanking. Like the Washington Wizards are tanking this year, right? They're gonna trade Jordan Poole. They could trade Kyle Kuzma, but for what? I mean, you're gonna get to the top of the draft and it's a lottery that's not guaranteed. And you don't, I mean, it just, so for different sports, man, it's just different. Like hockey and basketball, like it's a big time risk, man. I wouldn't do it in those sports. I wouldn't.
Yeah, like I said, to agree with you, the only sport I would do it in is football because there's a 100% chance of getting the number one pick if you're the worst team.
My nightmare scenario is a team that's just good enough to consistently win 7 to 10 games. You're never going to be good enough to compete with that team, and you're never going to be good enough to bottom out to get a better positional player, probably a quarterback, to take you over the hump. I don't believe in, from the outset of the season, oh, we're going to tank, we're just not going to have it this year, and writing the whole season off as a loss, because then what the fuck are you charging me tickets for? Like, what are we even doing here at this point? But if we're halfway through the season or a trade deadline comes up and we're clearly not making the playoffs, obviously I want players on my roster and my team that are going to go out and try and win and perform to the best of their ability for their own incentives and careers. But as far as organizationally, everybody above the coach, I'm going to start thinking different. I'm going to sit guys that have $30 million payout clauses if they fail physical in meaningless games. I'm going to put my hand on the scale to make it as difficult as possible for you guys, a la the Cleveland Indians. And if you want to win in spite of me, go freaking get it. But I'm looking to the future. That's my job, is to always be the guardian and the gatekeeper of the years ahead. And helping you guys win 8 games isn't going to get us anywhere next year. And
if you are going to tank, you have to have a strong enough organization to where after the tank happens, you can no longer tolerate losing. And because a lot of times apathy seeps into these organizations when they tank. And that's a tough thing to get out of an organization. And we've seen with the Buffalo Sabres for 10 years. So you better have a reason why I think it can't be. It's got to be above the coach level. If the coach or the players are in on it, then I think you're looking at cancerous culture. I agree, but go ahead.
I was just going to transition to our final topic, which is culture. But if you got something to add on the end of that,
no, because I think the thing I was going to talk about was culture anyway. So go ahead.
So final topic for the evening: culture. Is it real? Is it not real? How important is it? Do you absolutely need it to be successful? Can you win in spite of it? Where do you guys fall on your commitment to culture in the team that you're building?
Man, culture.
Go ahead. You go first, Ernie.
Culture to me is everything, man. There's so many good habits birthed out of good culture. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's one of those things that I feel like sometimes sports miss the human element, right? There are some out there from the old school days. Well, culture, just do what we fucking tell you to do, and that's just how it goes around here. But man, they're just, man, like when the human element is involved, like we've seen some phenomenal stories, like Steph Curry, like that dude was passed on. I mean, he was a 7th overall pick, but like he was scrawny and small, and like, no, we knew he could shoot, but that's about it. Can he develop his game? They had questions. Could he play defense at the next level? And it was the culture there. The culture there is what like got every ounce of ability out of that dude, man. I think culture and talent, I think they're married at the hip. I think you got to have it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 1,000,000%. If this comes to whether you're in a sports franchise or you're working a bartender at a restaurant or anything, if you enjoy going into work, you're going to be more productive. So
Yep.
when you build that when you build that culture, wanting to go into work because you are building, whether you're building toward a championship or you're building toward a playoff spot or something, that anybody who has that empowerment and excitement, they're going to work harder when they're building towards something. So I do think culture matters. I think a winning culture matters, and setting the standard of this is as much as culture is setting the standard of this is our standard of what we need to do when we come to work every day and we do this. And then when that standard breeds success, that's what builds the culture. When a coach says, here's our standard, and then you meet that standard and results happen. Then you have another standard and you meet that standard and even more results happen. That's where the culture lives. Culture, camaraderie. You don't have to get along with everybody outside the football field or basketball court or whatnot. The Golden State Warriors are notorious. They're one of the best passing teams of basketball all time. The way they share the basketball when they're on is beautiful. But they don't hang Steph Curry's got a family. He goes home. Draymond Green goes, after work, Klay Thompson's like the one guy, he dates all the movie stars and whatnot, but he's doing his own thing with that. Draymond Green does his own thing. Steph Curry does his own thing. They're not like great friends off the court. They just come together on the court. So when you have that winning culture and you want to go into work and you want to get better, that's where I think that separates the good teams from the great teams.
Yep.
For me, there's only one culture that is acceptable. It's a culture of accountability. If we're not holding ourselves accountable and holding each other accountable, then every other culture starts to deteriorate. And you know what you're left with when culture starts to deteriorate?
Nothing.
Cult.
Yeah.
You start losing your URE and it just becomes a cult.
You mean the Patriots?
Yeah, that's a good example. Especially once the winning starts slowing down, then all of a sudden the culture starts rubbing a lot of people the wrong way. But winning covers up everything. So was that culture why they were winning, or was that culture only allowed and permeated because they were winning? It's a bit of a chicken and the egg scenario there with the Patriot way. But there's other cultures that I find ultimately toxic and counterproductive to the business of sports and the goal of winning championships. I think the idea of a family culture inside of the locker room to some extent is okay, but pushed too far, this is a business. This is a business. At some point, I'm going to have to make a ruthless business decision here, and looking at everybody like they're family members, and even worse, when the fan base starts looking at different personnel people as family members, and they care more about their family member than they do about the production and the results on the field, I think you start drifting away from what our purpose is here and why we're here, and we're all brought together and we're all paid this large amounts of money.
Yeah.
That's really my only beef with culture. I think absolutely people got to enjoy being in the building. If you're rolling up to play football for millions of dollars, and every time you look at the front door after you park your car, fuck, I gotta go in here again. That shit easily translates to the field. What the hell am I gonna?
Yeah.
I think that increases injury rates too.
Mm-hmm.
But to add to your point, the guys that hate to lose don't mind the accountability. The guys who hate to lose, like I said, who you want in your locker room, welcome the accountability and embrace the accountability.
Yeah. And that's why I think if your culture is accountability, everybody knows where they stand. If I do something wrong, I'm not necessarily going to be punished, but it's going to be addressed, it's going to be discussed, and we're going to be on the same page here. And that has to go both ways. Like, I can't just be holding all you guys accountable for whatever the fuck you do, but when I fuck up, then like we just talk about this as a team mistake versus you got to fall on the sword once in a while to validate your own culture. It's an absolute necessity. Even if you weren't really actually at fault, sometimes just to reinforce the validation of the accountability, you got to be the one that's held accountable. And everybody respects that far more than not to get off on a tangent here, but I think this is the number one problem with law enforcement. There's no culture of accountability for themselves. So you want to go out here and police society and hold everybody else accountable to what they're doing, but nobody has any respect for you because you don't hold yourself accountable. It just doesn't work when accountability goes in one direction. Agreed. So, guys, any final thoughts on team building? Anything we didn't cover? Anything that's important to you? The intangibles here, Ernie first.
Well, other than I think organizations need to hire the three of us to get their shit together. No.
I mean, I second that. Let's do it.
Oh, Ernie, we've already discussed about how much seat time we've got running clock management and fourth down decisions and everything because of the amount of Madden games we've churned through.
Absolutely.
All right, that's going to bring us to an end here. Next week, we'll have Dave Croyle with us, and we'll be talking about activism in sports. I'm actually really looking forward to this topic because I think it's absolutely asinine that people get triggered by activism in sports like it hasn't been there the entire fucking time. Ernie, thank you very much for joining us. Sterling, as always, it's great to have you on my right. And guys, got anything to plug? Anything coming up? Anything you're working on?
Just your show next week. I'm looking forward to that myself.
Got the book
Yeah, I'll be Buffalo Rumblings post-game show right after the game on Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Hey, let's give a cheap plug to the Hezi podcast as well. You and Russ are rolling with the Hezi podcast. How's that going?
Me and Russ are chopping it up over there. We talk about all things sports. Last night's show was about college football, my Michigan Wolverines. So it was a fun day to talk sports because my Wolverines did it, man.
Hey, if I've learned anything from the Wolverines and the Patriots, cheating pays.
Cheating pays. Whatever.
All right. If you haven't visited the new Gratwick website yet, check it out. Sign up for the newsletter. Free book coming out next month. And we're going to close the show here with our calendar for the next 4 events. I'm not sure. I got to change the background here. There we go. Next week we've got David Croyle. We're going to be talking activism in sports. The week after that, we've got Dan Gambino coming in. We're going to talk parents in sports. Joe Tadaro after that, the culture of losing. That's going to be a good one with Joe. And then we've got Drew Gear from the Rockpile Report coming in to talk the business of sports. We'll be 10 episodes strong with guests and new topics every week. So thank you for joining the show. Gentlemen, peace out.
See ya.